The marble floors of the Zenith Tower in Lagos gleamed under the afternoon sun as Chioma Okafor pushed her cleaning cart down the empty executive corridor. At 53, she'd learned to make herself invisible, a skill perfected over 5 years of scrubbing toilets and emptying trash bins in Nigeria's most prestigious commercial building. Her worn uniform hung loose on her thin frame, and her graying hair was tucked beneath a faded headscarf. What would you do if you discovered your husband's secret life while hiding in a janitor's closet? Hit like if you believe in karma, and comment below where you're watching from. She glanced at her watch. 2:15. The executives would be in their afternoon meetings for at least another hour. Her stomach growled painfully, she hadn't eaten since the previous evening. The overnight shift at the hospital where she worked as a cleaner had drained what little energy she had left. This second job was killing her, but the school fees for her 3 children wouldn't pay themselves. Chioma slipped into the break room on the 42nd floor, reserved for senior management. Her hands trembled as she reached for a half-eaten plate of jollof rice and chicken someone had left behind. She just lifted a spoonful to her mouth when the door burst open. A woman in a pristine white suit stood in the doorway, her designer handbag worth more than Chioma earned in a year. Amara Nwosu, billionaire CEO of Nwosu Enterprises, owner of this building and half the real estate in Victoria Island. Her natural hair was styled in elegant locks, and her dark skin glowed with the confidence of old money and new power. Their eyes met. Chioma's hand froze, the spoon halfway to her lips. Shame burned through her chest as she waited for the security call, the firing, the public humiliation that would end both her jobs. Instead, Amara closed the door softly behind her. "What's your name?" Her voice was surprisingly gentle, tinged with an accent that spoke of London boarding schools and American universities. "Chioma, ma. Chioma Okafor." She set down the spoon, her appetite gone. "I'm sorry, ma. I was just hungry," Amara finished. She moved closer, studying Chioma with an intensity that made. Chioma stood outside the towering glass building at 8:45 the next morning, her reflection staring back at her from the polished exterior. The dress Amara had sent to her address, how had she gotten her address, fit perfectly. Deep emerald green, professional but elegant, nothing like the worn uniforms she usually wore. Her daughter Adana had helped style her hair that morning, tears of hope in her eyes. Have you ever had to choose between pride and survival? Hit like if you've ever felt invisible, and let us know in the comments where you're watching from. The security guard who usually ignored her cleaning cart did a double take. "Madam, good morning. How may I help you?" "I'm here to see Mrs. Nwosu," Chioma said, her voice steadier than she felt. "She's expecting me." On the 45th floor, Amara's personal office was a revelation. Floor-to-ceiling windows overlooked Lagos Island, the harbor glittering in the distance. Art that probably cost millions hung on cream-colored walls. And in the center of it all sat Amara, reviewing documents on 3 separate screens. She looked up as Chioma entered. "You're early. Good. We have a lot to cover before lunch." "Ma, I still don't understand what." "Sit." Amara gestured to the chair across from her desk. "I'm going to tell you something very few people know. 12 years ago, I was where you are now. Not cleaning buildings, I was a secretary at an accounting firm. My husband, a successful doctor, had been stealing from our joint account for years. Gave it all to his mistress, told me I was lucky he stayed with someone as average as me." Chioma's breath caught. "The billionaire and the loan it's standard procedure, ma," he finally managed, his voice cracking. His eyes kept darting between Chioma and Amara, confusion and fear warring on his face. "Standard?" Amara opened the file slowly, deliberately. "Because my forensic accountants found some interesting discrepancies. But we can discuss that later. For now, I wanted to introduce my new executive assistant. Some of you may need to coordinate with her on various matters." She gestured elegantly toward Chioma. "This is Mrs. Chioma Okafor. She'll be handling all communications between Nwosu Enterprises and your institution going forward." The room fell silent. Someone dropped a pen. Chidi looked like he might faint. Chioma?" She met his eyes steadily, channeling every ounce of pain and humiliation he'd caused her into one cold stare. "Good morning, Mr. Okafor. I look forward to working with you on these loan reviews. Especially the ones involving property fraud." His face went from pale to gray. Around the table, executives exchanged confused glances. The air crackled with tension and unspoken questions. Amara's smile was razor-sharp. "Shall we continue with the agenda? I believe we have quite a bit to discuss about ethical lending practices and the consequences of infidelity, irregularities, in loan approvals." Chioma watched her husband's world begin to crumble, and for the first time in years, she felt powerful. But she had no idea that across town, Ngozi Adelik was answering her phone to a call from her pastor husband, who just received anonymous photos of her and Chidi together. The revenge story was only beginning. Chioma sat in her new apartment, courtesy of Nwosu Enterprises Housing Benefits, and stared at her phone. It was nearly midnight, and Chidi had called 17 times in the past 4 hours. She'd ignored every single one. Her children were asleep in actual beds, in actual separate rooms. Adana, her 19-year-old, had cried when she'd seen the 2-bedroom flat in a secure compound in Yaba. "Mama, is this real? Is this truly ours? Would you ignore your cheating spouse's desperate calls, or confront them immediately? Hit like if you believe in making them sweat, and tell us where you're tuning in from." The 18th call came through. This time, she answered. "Where are you?" Chidi's voice was frantic, angry, scared, a cocktail of emotions that gave her a grim satisfaction. "Chioma, where are my children?" "Our children," she corrected calmly, "are asleep. In their beds. In our home." "What home? What are you talking about?" "The landlord came today threatening to throw out our things because the rent hasn't been paid in 5 months. Then perhaps you should have used my salary to pay it, instead of funding your girlfriend's lifestyle." Silence. Heavy, loaded silence. "That meeting today," he finally said, his voice dropping to something between a threat and a plea. "What are you doing, Chioma? That woman, that billionaire, what lies have you been telling her?" "No lies, Chidi. Just truth. About the money you stole. The apartment you bought for Ngozi. The school fees you claimed were paid but weren't." Her voice remained steady, emotionless. Years of practice hiding pain made her an excellent actress now. "How is Ngozi, by the way? I hear her husband found out about you too." She heard his sharp intake of breath. "How did you?" "I know everything now. That's what happens when you stop being invisible." Chioma stood, walking to the window. Lagos glittered below, a city of 8 million stories, and for the first time, she felt like hers mattered. "I know about the forged loan documents. The falsified income statements. The property fraud. Should I continue?" "You don't know what you're talking about," he blustered, but the fear in his voice was palpable. "You're just a cleaner, Chioma. A nobody. You think putting on a fancy dress and sitting in some office makes you powerful?" "No," she said quietly. "But having evidence of your crimes does. Having the CEO of your bank's biggest client as my employer does. Having a lawyer who specializes in domestic betrayal and financial abuse cases does. That makes me powerful." "You wouldn't dare." "I already have. The Economic and Financial Crimes Commission received an anonymous tip this evening. About a loan officer at GT Bank who's been running a systematic fraud scheme. They'll be at your office tomorrow morning." It was a bluff. Amara hadn't actually filed anything yet, but Chioma had learned that half of power was making people believe you had more than you did. Chidi's breathing became ragged. "Chioma, listen to me. We can work this out. I made mistakes, yes, but we're married. We have children. You can't destroy me like this." "I'm not." "Why would we give him the choice?" Chioma asked, confused. Zainab smiled grimly. "Because Pastor David has something we need. He has direct connections to the Banking Regulations Board. His brother-in-law is a senior official there. If we play this right, we can use his influence to expedite the investigation into Chidi's loan fraud. He gets to avoid public humiliation, we get faster justice for you, and Ngozi faces legal consequences for the embezzlement. It's chess, not checkers," Ifeoma explained. "Revenge isn't just about destroying your enemies. It's about positioning yourself so far ahead that they can't even reach you anymore." Chioma processed the information. Part of her wanted the public disgrace, wanted to see both Chidi and Ngozi dragged through social media and community gossip. But the strategic part, the part that was learning from Amara, saw the bigger picture. "Use the information," she decided. "Get the investigation expedited. I want Chidi in legal trouble, not just social trouble. I want actual consequences." Amara nodded approvingly. "Smart. Zainab, set up a meeting with Pastor David for tomorrow. Discreet location." "Already done," Zainab said. 3 p.m. at the Wheatbaker Hotel in Ikoyi. As the meeting continued, outlining strategies and timelines, Chioma felt herself transforming. The scared, broken woman who'd hidden to eat leftovers was being replaced by someone sharper, stronger, more dangerous. Her phone buzzed. Another text from Chidi, "I know what you're planning. Touch me and I'll make sure you never see the children again." She showed Amara the message. The billionaire's expression darkened. That was a mistake on his part. Threatening custody gives us grounds for an emergency protection order. "Zainab, I'll file this afternoon. We'll have his access to the children legally restricted by tonight." Zainab was already typing on her laptop. And this text is evidence of emotional manipulation and threatening behavior. It'll play beautifully in court. Wait, Chioma said, a thought occurring to her. What if we let him think he's winning? What if I respond like I'm scared? The Wheatbaker Hotel's private lounge was elegantly appointed, all leather chairs and subtle lighting designed for discretion. Chioma sat beside Amara and Zainab, watching as Pastor David Adelik entered the room precisely at 3 p.m. He was younger than she'd expected, maybe 45, handsome in the way successful men often are, with the kind of confidence that came from years of commanding large audiences. His agbada was pristine white, perfectly tailored, and a gold cross hung prominently around his neck. But his eyes were cold, calculating. This was a man who understood power and image above all else. Have you ever watched someone's perfect facade crack in real time? Hit like if you love seeing the truth come out, and comment where you're watching from. We love seeing your locations. Mrs. Nwosu, he said, ignoring the other women entirely. I'm here as a courtesy. I assume this is about my wife's indiscretion. Among other things, Amara replied coolly. Please, sit. He did, arranging his agbada with practiced precision. If you're hoping I'll go easy on her, you're wasting your time. Ngozi has humiliated me, our church, everything I've built. She'll face the full consequences of her actions. We're not here to plead for mercy on her behalf, Zainab said, opening her laptop. We're here to show you something that might change your approach. She turned the screen toward him. Bank statements, transfer records, church account ledgers, all meticulously documented. Pastor David's expression didn't change, but Chioma noticed his hands tighten on the arms of his chair. For the past 3 years, Zainab continued, your wife has been systematically embezzling money from the victorious church. Small amounts at first, 20, 30,000 naira here and there. But in the last year, it escalated. She's taken approximately 47 million naira from various church accounts, all funneled to the apartment she shares with Mr. Chidi Okafor. Now emotion flickered across the pastor's face. Rage, pure and barely controlled. That apartment, Amara added, was purchased through a fraudulent loan that Mr. Okafor approved at GT Bank, where he works. The loan documents list Ngozi's income as 3 times what she actually makes at your church's administrative office. In essence, they've committed multiple crimes: embezzlement, bank fraud, falsification of documents. Pastor David was silent for a long moment. When he spoke, his voice was deadly quiet. Why are you telling me this? Because we want something from you, Chioma said, speaking for the first time. All eyes turned to her. And you want something from us. And what could I possibly want from you? His tone was dismissive, but she saw the calculation in his eyes. Silence, she said simply. That's your right, Zainab agreed. We won't stop you. In fact, we'll provide all the financial documentation you need. Then we have a deal. He straightened his agbada. I'll make the call this evening. Your investigation should move forward by end of week. Pleasure doing business with you, Amara said, not bothering to hide the irony in her voice. Pastor David paused at the door, looking back at Chioma. Your husband is a fool. He had a wife willing to work 2 jobs to support her family, and he threw it away for that. The contempt in his voice when speaking of Ngozi was chilling. At least you have the sense to fight back. When he left, Chioma exhaled shakily. Is it always like this? Is revenge always so complicated? The best revenge isn't simple. Retrio. Continue. Amara said, pouring herself water from the crystal decanter on the table. The best revenge is systematic. It's about dismantling everything they built on your back, piece by piece, until they're standing in the rubble wondering how they fell so far. And making sure they know you're the one who pushed them, Chioma added with a grin. That's the important part. Chioma's phone buzzed. A text from Chidi. Where are you? You said you'd come to the house. Are you coming or not? She showed it to the others. He's getting anxious, Zainab observed. Good. Anxious people make mistakes. Are you still willing to meet him tomorrow? The recording equipment is ready, but if you're having second thoughts. No second thoughts, Chioma interrupted. I need to do this. I need to hear him admit what he's done, need him to think he's still in control. Just for one last time. Amara studied her carefully. You're sure? Men like Chidi can be dangerous when they're cornered. We can pursue other legal avenues without you having to face him directly. I'm sure. Chioma's voice was steady, but inside, her heart hammered. He needs to see that I'm not afraid anymore. Even if it's an act, even if I'm terrified, he needs to believe I came to him as the broken woman he thinks I am, so when everything falls apart, he'll know it was me. He'll know the woman he thought was nothing destroyed everything. The 3 women exchanged glances, a silent conversation Chioma was beginning to understand. This was about more than just her case. This was about a network of women who'd been betrayed, who'd rebuilt themselves, who now helped others do the same. Each story was different, but the core was the same: take back your power, make them face consequences, and build something better from the ashes. Then we do it properly, Amara decided. Zainab, brief her on the recording equipment. Chioma, have your team ready to receive any files we get. She deleted the message without responding. At 2 a.m., another text came through, this time from Chitty. I know what you're planning tomorrow. You think you're so clever now, with your rich friend and your fancy job. But you forget, I know you. I know every weak spot, every fear. Come to the house, and I'll remind you exactly who you are. The threat was clear. He planned to intimidate her, to break her down the way he'd done countless times before. To make her remember the years of emotional manipulation, the times he'd convinced her she was worthless. But Chioma wasn't that woman anymore. Or rather, she was that woman. She'd always been strong, she'd just forgotten. Now she was remembering. And tomorrow, Chitty would learn the difference between a woman who was broken and a woman who was building herself back up. She typed a response, I'll be there at 6 p.m. Just us, like you said. We'll talk. His reply was instant, good. Come alone. Leave your phone. This is between husband and wife. Chioma smiled grimly. He was already making mistakes, already showing his hand. Demanding she come alone and without her phone was basically an admission that he planned to threaten or harm her. Otherwise, why would those conditions matter? She forwarded the exchange to Zainab, who responded within minutes, perfect. This establishes premeditation. Whatever he does or says tomorrow, we can prove he planned it. Get some rest. Tomorrow, we win. But rest didn't come. Instead, Chioma spent the remaining hours before dawn thinking about the past 3 years, about every time Chitty had made her feel small, every moment she'd questioned her own worth because he'd told her she was worthless. Tomorrow, she'd face him one last time as the wife he thought he'd destroyed. And when she walked away, he'd finally understand what he'd actually created, a woman with nothing left to lose and everything to gain. In a luxury apartment across town, Amara Nwosu sat in her home office, reviewing the files on Chioma's case. On her wall were photographs, 23 women, each one a success story. Women who'd been abused, betrayed, financially devastated by men who'd underestimated them. Each one had rebuilt, with Amara's help, into something stronger. Tomorrow, Chioma would join them. Another woman reclaimed. Another man held accountable. Amara thought of her own ex-husband. Chioma stood outside the small one-room apartment in Mushin where she'd lived with Chitty and their children for 8 years. The paint was peeling, the neighborhood noisy with generators and evening commerce, people selling akara and bread from wheelbarrows. It felt like a lifetime ago that this had been her normal. Would you be brave enough to face your abuser alone, knowing the truth would finally come out? Hit like if you admire Chioma's courage, and tell us where you're watching from. She touched the button on her blouse. The recording device was active, confirmed by the single vibration she'd felt when she'd pressed it in the car. Amara's security team was parked 2 streets away, monitoring everything. The panic word was Adana. If she said her daughter's name in any context, they'd come immediately. The door was unlocked. Chitty wanted her to walk in and find him in a position of power. She took a deep breath and entered. He sat in the only chair they owned, the one he'd always claimed as his. A bottle of Guinness sat on the rickety table beside him, and the room smelled of sweat and frustration. He looked thinner than she remembered, his face haggard. The confident man from the bank meeting was gone, replaced by something desperate and mean. You came, he said, not standing. I wasn't sure you would. Thought maybe your rich friends would tell you to stay away. You said we needed to talk, Chioma replied, keeping her voice neutral. She stayed near the door. Zainab's advice. About our marriage. Our children. Our marriage. He laughed bitterly. That's funny, Chioma. You destroy my career, turn my girlfriend's husband against her, have her arrested, make me a laughingstock at work, and now you want to talk about our marriage? I didn't have anyone arrested. Ngozi stole from her church. That has nothing to do with me. It has everything to do with you. He stood abruptly, and Chioma fought the urge to step back. Stay calm. Get him talking. You and that billionaire woman, you think I don't know what you're doing? Trying to ruin me, trying to take everything. You took everything first, she said quietly. My salary. My dignity. Years of my life. I gave you a home. I gave you children. I stayed with you when any other man would have left a useless woman who can only clean floors. There it was, the emotional manipulation, the gaslighting. She'd heard it so many times she'd almost believed it. But now, hearing it with clear ears, she recognized it for what it was, abuse. Where did my salary go, Chitty? She needed him to say it, needed it on record. Where it needed to go. To take care of things you couldn't understand. Business investments, networking, maintaining. Zainab appeared with a first aid kit, gently cleaning the blood from Chioma's lip. We need to photograph this, document everything. It'll be crucial for the protection order and the divorce proceedings. I know. Chioma submitted to the documentation, the photos, the medical examination that Detective Musa had arranged. Through it all, she felt oddly detached, as if watching herself from a distance. It was only later, back in Amara's car heading to the hospital for a full medical report, that the reality hit her. I did it, she whispered. I actually did it. You did, Amara confirmed, squeezing her hand. You faced your abuser, you got the evidence, and you didn't back down even when he became violent. That took incredible courage. I was terrified. Courage isn't the absence of fear. It's acting despite the fear. Amara's expression softened. I know this doesn't feel like victory right now. You're probably in shock, probably processing everything. But Chioma, you just changed your life. More than that, you probably saved it. Men like Chitty escalate. If you'd stayed, if you'd continued to submit to his control. She didn't need to finish the sentence. They both knew how these stories often ended. At the hospital, a doctor examined her thoroughly, documenting not just the fresh split lip but old scars, healed fractures in her ribs from previous beatings, bruises in various stages of healing. Physical evidence of years of abuse that Chioma had hidden, minimized, explained away. Mrs. Okafor, the doctor said gently, an older woman with kind eyes, you've endured significant trauma over what appears to be several years. I'm required to report this, and I'm also going to recommend counseling. What you've been through, both the physical abuse and the emotional manipulation, that leaves scars beyond the physical. I know, Chioma said. I'll do whatever is necessary. Later that night, back in her apartment with her children, Chioma sat them all down. Adana, her eldest. Ibuka, her 12-year-old son. And Chinedu, the baby at 8 years old. They deserved the truth. Your father was arrested today, she began. Ibuka's eyes widened. Chinedu looked confused. Adana just nodded, as if she'd been expecting this. Why, Mama? Chinedu asked, his voice small. Because he did things that were wrong. He stole money, he hurt people, he broke laws. And when people do wrong things, there are consequences. Will he go to prison? Ibuka's voice cracked between child and adolescent. Yes. For a long time. Chinedu started crying. Despite everything Chitty had done, he was still their father, still the man who'd occasionally played football with them, who'd told them stories before bed in rare good moods. Children loved complicated people, and that love didn't disappear just because the parent was terrible. Chioma held her youngest son, letting him cry against her shoulder. 3 months later, Chioma sat in the conference room at Nwosu Enterprises, leading her first major presentation. 15 real estate developers listened as she outlined investment opportunities in emerging Lagos neighborhoods, her voice confident, her data impeccable. The Yaba corridor, she explained, pointing to the digital display, is undergoing rapid gentrification. Property values have increased 43% in the last 18 months. Our proposal is to acquire strategic parcels now, before the next development wave hits. Have you ever watched someone completely transform their life in just months? Hit like if you believe in second chances, and comment where you're watching from. Your support means everything. She'd been working with Amara intensively, business courses at night, shadowing executives during the day, learning everything from contract negotiation to property law. Her brain, dormant for years under Chitty's crushing control, had awakened hungry and sharp. The developers asked questions. She answered each one precisely, drawing on research she'd conducted, market analysis she'd completed, projections she'd calculated herself. When the meeting ended, one of them, a distinguished older man named Chief Okonkwo, approached her. Mrs. Okafor, that was impressive. Very impressive. 5 years ago, who were you working for? 5 years ago, I was cleaning this building, she said honestly. I was working 2 janitor jobs to feed my children while my husband stole my salary. His eyebrows rose. And now? Now I'm building a future where my children never have to accept less than they deserve. He smiled, genuinely pleased. I like you. Let's talk about a partnership opportunity. I'm developing a project in Ikoyi, luxury apartments. I could use someone with your insight and your hunger. After he left, Amara entered the conference room, her expression proud. That was masterful. Chief Okonkwo is notoriously difficult to impress, and you just became his new favorite consultant. I learned from the best, Chioma said, but exhaustion suddenly overwhelmed her. 3 months of intensive work, of divorce proceedings, of therapy for herself and the children, of building a new life while dismantling the old one, it was catching up to her. Sit, Amara commanded, noting her expression. You're burning yourself out. I can't afford to slow down. The divorce hearing is next week, Chitty's trial starts in 2 months, and I need to. You need to breathe. Amara poured water, handed it to her. I know that drive, Chioma. I lived it myself. The desperate need to prove you're not what your abuser said you were, to build so high and so fast that no one can ever drag you down again. But you have to pace yourself, or you'll collapse before you reach the summit. How did you do it? Chioma asked. How did you balance the revenge and the rebuilding and the healing all at once? Badly, at first. I worked myself into a hospital stay with stress-induced health problems 18 months after my divorce. That's when I learned that the best revenge isn't just success, it's sustained success. Being healthy enough, stable enough, present enough to actually enjoy the life you're building. Before Chioma could respond, her phone rang. Zainab. She answered immediately. Chioma, we need to meet. Now. There's been a development in Chitty's case. 30 minutes later, Chioma sat in Zainab's law office in Ikoyi, her stomach twisted with anxiety. Chitty's lawyer has made an offer, Zainab began without preamble. He's willing to plead guilty to reduce charges, bank fraud with a lighter sentence recommendation, if you agree to certain terms. What terms? Joint custody of the divorce proceedings were brutal. Chitty's lawyer painted Chioma as a gold digger who'd manipulated a wealthy benefactor, a neglectful mother who worked too much, a vindictive ex-wife seeking revenge rather than justice. Mrs. Okafor, the lawyer said during one particularly harsh cross-examination, isn't it true that you accepted extremely generous benefits from Mrs. Nwosu, housing, employment, educational support, benefits that might suggest an inappropriate relationship? My relationship with Mrs. Nwosu is professional and mentorship-based, Chioma responded calmly, exactly as Zainab had coached her. She employs me because I'm good at my job, and she supports programs for women escaping domestic violence. There's nothing inappropriate about that. Retrio. Continue. But you went from cleaning toilets to a high-level position in mere months. Surely you can see how that appears suspicious. What appears suspicious, Chioma replied, her voice cutting, is a loan officer who approved fraudulent loans for his mistress's apartment. What appears suspicious is a man who stole his wife's entire salary for 3 years. What appears suspicious is someone claiming to be a good father while his children went hungry. Perhaps we should focus on actual crimes rather than a woman's legitimate employment. The courtroom murmured. Even the judge looked vaguely approving. Chitty's lawyer changed tactics. You claim abuse, Mrs. Okafor, yet you stayed for years. You had 2 jobs, you could have left at any time. Doesn't your choice to stay suggest the abuse wasn't as severe as you now claim? This was the question Chioma had dreaded, the one that struck at her deepest shame. But she'd worked through it in therapy, had learned to answer it truthfully. I stayed because he convinced me I was worthless, she said quietly. Because he told me no one else would want a woman my age with 3 children. Because every time I thought about leaving, he'd threaten to take the children, to tell everyone I was crazy, to make sure I ended up with nothing. I stayed because I was terrified and broken and didn't know there was another option. She looked directly at Chitty, who sat at the defendant's table looking simultaneously smug and nervous. But I'm not broken anymore. And I'm done accepting lies as truth. The divorce was granted with full custody to Chioma. Chitty received supervised visitation rights, 2 hours per month, with a social worker present. The judge cited his criminal charges, history of domestic violence, and financial abuse as evidence that unsupervised contact would not be in the children's best interests. Chitty's face twisted with rage as the judgment was read. His mother wailed dramatically from the gallery. But Chioma felt only relief, clean and absolute. The criminal trial began 2 weeks later. Detective Ibrahim Musa testified about the fraud investigation, the pattern of illegal loan approvals, the interview went viral. Within days, Chioma's phone was flooded with messages from women across Nigeria and the diaspora, sharing their own stories, asking for advice, seeking resources. Amara watched the interview from her office, satisfaction warm in her chest. Another woman reclaimed. Another abuser held accountable. The work continued. 2 weeks later, Chitty Okafor was sentenced to 12 years in prison, 8 for the financial crimes, 4 more for the domestic violence charges, to be served consecutively. He was also ordered to pay full restitution to the bank and to Chioma for the stolen wages, though everyone knew he had no assets left to seize. Mr. Okafor, the judge said during sentencing, you had every advantage, education, employment, a devoted wife, healthy children. Instead of honoring those blessings, you chose to steal, to deceive, to abuse. You showed no remorse, no recognition of the harm you caused. This sentence reflects the seriousness of your crimes and the need to protect society from individuals who abuse positions of trust. Chidi was led away in handcuffs, his mother still wailing about injustice, about evil women destroying good men, about curses and karma. Chioma felt nothing watching him go. No satisfaction, no grief, no anger. Just relief. A chapter closed. A debt paid. Justice, imperfect but real. That evening, she gathered her children in their apartment, not so different from the one they'd shared months ago, but transformed by safety and hope. Your father will be in prison for a long time, she told them gently. I know that's hard to hear, even after everything. He's still your father, and it's okay to have complicated feelings about this. Adana nodded slowly. I'm sad for him. But I'm not sad he's gone. Does that make sense? Perfect sense. Ibuka was quiet, processing. Finally, will we visit him? That's up to you. If you want to, we can arrange supervised visits. If you don't, that's okay too. There's no right answer, only what feels right for you. Chinidu, now understanding more than he had months ago, asked, Mama, why did Papa hurt you? It was the question she'd been dreading and expecting. Because he had problems inside himself, anger, insecurity, the need to control others to feel powerful. None of it was about me, even though he made me believe it was. And none of it was your fault either. Sometimes people make very bad choices, and the people who love them have to deal with the consequences. But you stopped him, Ibuka said, something like awe in his voice. You fought back. I did. And I want you all to remember this, if someone is hurting you, if someone makes you feel small or scared or worthless, you don't have to accept that. You can fight back, you can ask for help, you can leave. You never have to stay in a situation that destroys you. They talked late into the night, processing, grieving, healing. It would be a long journey, therapy would continue for years, the emotional scars would take time to fade. But they were on the path now, walking toward light instead of darkness. The next morning, Chioma received an unexpected visitor at the Nwosu Enterprises office. Pastor David Adelik, looking considerably less polished than the last time she'd seen him. Mrs. Okafor, he said, clearly uncomfortable. I wanted to speak with you before I leave Lagos. Leave Lagos? I'm stepping down from the Victorious Church. After the situation with Ngozi, after the financial investigations, my congregation lost faith in my leadership. I've accepted a position at a smaller church in Ibadan. A fresh start. He looked genuinely humbled, a far cry from the arrogant televangelist she'd met months ago. I'm sorry to hear that, Chioma said, meaning it partially. She didn't take pleasure in everyone's downfall, only those who directly harmed her. I wanted to thank you, actually. And to apologize. He sat without being invited, suddenly looking exhausted. When we made that deal, I thought I was being clever. Using you to protect myself while getting rid of a problem. But watching your case, watching how you fought, watching your ex-husband's sentence, it made me realize how many women I've failed over the years. Chioma raised an eyebrow. How so? Women in my congregation who came to me about abusive husbands. I counseled them to pray more, to submit more, to be better wives. I told them that divorce was a sin, that they needed to preserve their marriages at all costs. His voice, Amara smiled. Then that's what we'll build. Together. That night, Chioma wrote a letter to her former self, the woman who'd hidden to eat scraps, who'd believed she was nothing, who'd thought escape was impossible. Dear Chioma. Right now, you're so tired you can barely stand. You're scared and ashamed and convinced you're trapped forever. I wish I could tell you that it gets easier immediately, that some miracle will save you. But the truth is harder and better than that, you will save yourself. In a few months, a billionaire will walk in while you're eating leftovers. She'll see you, really see you, and offer you a chance. Take it. Trust her. Trust yourself. The man who makes you feel worthless is actually worthless himself. The marriage you're trying so hard to save is already dead. Your children will be fine, better than fine. They'll thrive once they're safe. You are not crazy. You are not worthless. You are not trapped. You are strong. You are valuable. You are already surviving something that would break most people. Hold on. Fight back. Build something better. The woman you become will make you proud. Love, Chioma, future. She never sent the letter, but writing it felt like closure. Like finally forgiving the woman she'd been for not fighting back sooner, for staying too long, for believing the lies. That woman had done her best with what she had. This woman, the one she was becoming, would do better with what she had now. And that was enough. The revenge was complete. The justice was served. Now came the harder, better work, building a life worth living. But Chioma didn't know that the story wasn't quite over. Because across town, in a women's prison, Ngozi Adelik had just given birth to Chidi's son. And she'd made a decision that would bring Chioma face to face with her past one final time. The ultimate test of forgiveness versus revenge was about to begin. You won't believe what happens next. Hit that subscribe button and turn on notifications because Chapter 7 is going to blow your mind. Do you think Chioma should forgive Ngozi or maintain her boundaries? Drop your predictions in the comments, and share this story with anyone who loves powerful tales of justice and transformation. 6 months after Chidi's sentencing, Chioma stood in the conference room of her own office, a small space she'd leased in Yaba, headquarters for the Okafor Foundation for Domestic Violence Survivors. The walls were covered with photos of women they'd helped, resources they'd provided, lives they'd changed. She was in the middle of a strategy meeting with her small team when her assistant knocked urgently. "Ma, there's a woman here to see you. She says it's urgent. She has a baby with her." Something in the assistant's tone made Chioma pause. Did she give her name? Ngozi Adelik. The room fell silent. Everyone on Chioma's team knew the story. It was impossible not to, given how public the case had been. What would you do if your husband's mistress showed up at your door with his baby? Hit like if you're as shocked as we are, and comment where you're watching from. We want to hear from our global audience. Should I send her away? The assistant asked. Chioma's first instinct was yes. Send her away, maintain boundaries, refuse to engage with the woman who'd helped destroy her marriage. But something stopped her, curiosity, perhaps, or the hard-earned wisdom that running from difficult conversations rarely served anyone well. Give me 5 minutes, then send her in. When Ngozi entered, Chioma barely recognized her. The polished woman who'd lived in luxury on stolen money was gone. This Ngozi was thin, worn, her clothes cheap and ill-fitting. The baby in her arms couldn't have been more than 4 months old, Chidi's son, the child he'd been so proud about when boasting to his friends. "Mrs. Okafor," Ngozi began, her voice shaking. "Thank you for seeing me. I know I have no right to be here." "You don't," Chioma agreed coldly. "So why are you?" Ngozi's eyes filled with tears. "Because I need help. And because you're the only person who might understand." "Understand what?" "How you slept with my husband for 3 years. How you lived in an apartment bought with my children's school fees. How you participated in the theft and lies that destroyed my family." Chioma's voice was calm but cutting. "I understand all of that perfectly, Ms. Adelik. What I don't understand is why you think I would help you. Because you help women in crisis. That's what your foundation does. And I'm in crisis." Ngozi shifted the baby, who'd started fussing. "I was released from prison 2 months ago. Early release because of the baby. But I have nothing, no money, no home, no job. My husband divorced me, my family disowned me, and I'm living in a shelter with my son. The son you conceived while destroying my marriage." "Yes." Ngozi's voice broke. "I'm not asking you to forgive me. I'm not even asking you to like me. I'm asking you to help my baby. He didn't choose any of this. He didn't ask to be born from an affair, to have a criminal for a father and a fool for a mother. But he's innocent, and he deserves a chance." Chioma studied the baby. Chidi's features were already visible in the shape of his eyes, the curve of his mouth. This child was her own children's half-brother, tied to them by blood regardless of the circumstances of his conception. "What exactly are you asking for?" "Job training. Childcare assistance. Help finding housing I can afford. The resources your foundation provides." Ngozi met her eyes. "I know it's asking a lot. I know what I did was unforgivable. But I'm trying to be better. I'm trying to give my son a life that doesn't repeat my mistakes. Why should I believe you want to be better? You lied to your husband, stole from your church, helped Chidi steal from my children. Those aren't mistakes, they're choices." "You're right. They were choices. Terrible choices made by a woman who thought she could buy happiness with someone else's money." Ngozi's voice hardened with something like anger at herself. "Chidi told me you were separated, that you'd agreed to divorce, that you were keeping him trapped in a loveless marriage. I believed him because I wanted to believe him. Because believing him meant I wasn't a homewrecker, I was just a woman in love. But you knew he was married. You knew he had children. I did. And I convinced myself it didn't matter because he said you didn't love him anymore." She laughed bitterly. "I was so stupid. He played me exactly the way he played you, with lies and manipulation and the illusion of being special. The difference is, you were strong enough to fight back. I just became another victim of his schemes." "You're not a victim," Chioma said sharply. "You had choices I didn't have. You could have walked away at any time. You chose to stay, chose to accept money you knew came from somewhere questionable, chose to help him hide his crimes. Don't compare your situation to mine." "You're right. I'm sorry." Ngozi looked down at her baby, who'd finally quieted. "I'm not here to make excuses or claim victim status. I'm here because I'm desperate and you're the only person I know who helps desperate women. If you turn me away, I'll understand. But I had to try." Chioma sat in silence, emotions warring inside her. Every rational part of her screamed to refuse, to send this woman away, to protect herself from I was so focused on what I didn't have, she told a group of young women at one foundation workshop, Kelechi sleeping in a carrier on her chest. I saw Chitty's money, his confidence, his promises, and I thought that was love. I thought that was security. But it was all stolen, stolen money, stolen time, stolen from his real family. And when it all collapsed, I was left with nothing but shame and a baby who deserves better than what I gave him. The women listened, some judgmental, others sympathetic. But they all heard the message: affairs built on lies destroy everyone involved. One evening, 6 months after Ngozi had first appeared at the foundation, she and Chioma found themselves alone in the office after an event. "Can I ask you something?" Ngozi said hesitantly. "You can ask. I might not answer. Why did you really help me? And please don't say it was just about your principles or the foundation's mission. There's something else. I can feel it." Chioma considered deflecting, then decided honesty was earned at this point. "Because I needed to prove to myself that I wasn't who Chitty said I was. He always claimed I was vindictive, petty, that I held grudges and couldn't forgive. Helping you was proof that I could be bigger than his narrative about me. That I could separate my hurt from someone else's need. So I was a test." "We're all tests," Chioma corrected. "Every hard choice, every uncomfortable situation, every person who challenges us, they're all tests of who we claim to be versus who we actually are." "Did you pass?" Chioma smiled slightly. "I think so. Because I'm not helping you for revenge or to prove anything anymore. I'm helping you because you're genuinely trying to change, and because Kelechi deserves a mother who's stable and employed and healing. That's enough reason." Ngozi's eyes filled with tears. "I don't know if I can ever make up for what I did. To you, to your children, to my own life. But I'm trying. Every day, I'm trying to be someone my son can be proud of. Then keep trying. That's all any of us can do, keep trying to be better than we were yesterday." A year after Chitty's conviction, Chioma received a letter from him. She almost threw it away without reading, but curiosity won. "Chioma, I know you probably won't read this. I know I have no right to contact you. But I've had a lot of time to think in here, and I need to say some things. You were right about everything. I stole from you, I abused you, I destroyed our family through my own selfishness and cruelty. I convinced myself you were the problem, that you were boring, difficult, not enough. But the truth is, I was terrified of how strong you were. You worked 2 jobs without complaining. You raised our children with love and patience I never had. You kept our family together despite me, not because of me. I broke you down because I was threatened by who you could become if you realized your own worth. And now, seeing news stories about your foundation, hearing from my mother about how successful you are, knowing our children are thriving, I realize I was right to be threatened. You were always capable of greatness. I was just too small to see it. I'm not asking for forgiveness. I'm not even asking you to respond to this letter. I just needed you to know, it was never about you being insufficient. It was always about me being insecure, cruel, and stupid enough to destroy the best thing in my life. I'm glad you got out. I'm glad you found Amara and built something meaningful. I'm glad our children have you as a mother. I'm sorry. For everything. Chitty." Chioma read the letter 3 times, processing the words she'd spent years desperate to hear. An admission. An apology. An acknowledgement that the abuse was about his issues, not her inadequacy. It should have felt like victory. Like vindication. Like the final piece of healing falling into place. Instead, she felt nothing. Or not nothing, just a quiet acknowledgement that these words would have meant everything 5 years ago, would have changed her world 3 years ago, would have healed something broken 2 years ago. But now? Now she'd already healed that wound herself. She'd already learned that his abuse was about him, not her. She'd already built a life so full and meaningful that his opinion simply didn't matter anymore. She filed the letter away without responding. He'd served his purpose, as a cautionary tale, as motivation, as a reminder of what she'd escaped. But he wasn't part of her present or her future. He was just history, gradually fading into irrelevance. That night, she gathered her children for a family meeting. Others were nodding, recognizing their own stories in hers. "I chose to fight. And let me be clear, it wasn't easy, it wasn't pretty, and it wasn't a fairy tale. Fighting back meant facing my abuser, documenting years of violence, testifying in court, and watching my children process trauma no child should have to carry. It meant helping the woman who'd been my husband's mistress because my principles demanded I separate the person from their mistakes. It meant building a foundation while still healing from the wounds that made the foundation necessary." She told them about the recording device, about the trial, about Chitty's conviction and 12-year sentence. She told them about Ngozi showing up with a baby, about choosing compassion over revenge. She told them about the letter from prison and her choice not to respond. Here's what I learned, Chioma continued, her voice growing stronger. Revenge isn't about destroying your abuser, it's about building yourself so high they can't touch you anymore. Justice isn't just about legal consequences, it's about reclaiming your narrative, your worth, your future. And healing isn't linear. Some days you feel powerful. Other days you remember how scared you were and wonder how you survived. Both are valid. Both are part of the journey. The applause started slowly, then built to a roar. Women stood, some openly weeping, others beaming with recognition and solidarity. During the Q&A session, a woman in her 60s raised her hand. Mrs. Okafor, what would you say to a woman who's been in an abusive marriage for decades? Someone who thinks it's too late to start over. Chioma looked directly at her. I would say that every day you wake up is a day you can make a different choice. Age doesn't make you less worthy of safety, respect, and love. In fact, your years of survival prove how strong you are. You've already been doing the hard thing, surviving abuse. Leaving and rebuilding is just a different kind of hard, but one that leads somewhere better. Another woman asked, how do you deal with people who judge you for breaking up your family? For sending your children's father to prison? I remind myself that I didn't break up my family, he did, with every theft, every lie, every blow. I didn't send him to prison, his crimes did. And I remind people that staying in an abusive marriage doesn't preserve a family. It teaches children that love means accepting violence, that loyalty means tolerating theft, that family means sacrificing yourself completely. Those aren't lessons I want my children to learn. A younger woman, maybe 25, stood. What about those of us who were the other woman? Who participated in affairs? Do we deserve help too? Chioma saw Ngozi in the back of the room. She'd made the trip to Accra as part of the foundation's team, and smiled slightly. Everyone deserves help. Everyone deserves a chance to change and grow and become better. But help comes with responsibility. You have to be honest about your choices and their consequences. You have to do the work of understanding why you made those choices and how to avoid making them again. You have to accept that the people you hurt may never forgive you, and that's their right. Growth isn't about earning forgiveness from others, it's about becoming someone you can forgive yourself for being. The conference continued for 3 days. Chioma networked with other organizations, shared resources, learned new strategies for helping survivors. She met women from every corner of the continent, each with stories of betrayal and resilience, of domestic violence and recovery, of marriages that nearly killed them and the courage that saved them. On the final night, at a gala dinner celebrating African women's achievements, Amara approached Chioma with a glass of champagne. You did it, the billionaire said simply. You took your pain and turned it into purpose. That's rare, Chioma. Most people just survive their trauma. You transformed yours into a movement. We did it, Chioma corrected. I couldn't have done any of this without you. Without your belief in me when I couldn't believe in myself. That's what women do for each other, Amara said, raising her glass. We see potential others miss. We invest in transformation. We build each other up because we know how hard the world works to tear us down. They clinked glasses, two women who'd survived betrayal and built empires from the ashes. What's next for you? Amara asked. Chioma thought about the consulting business that was now profitable, about the foundation that was expanding to 3 more Nigerian cities, about the book deal she'd just signed to tell her story. About her children, thriving and healthy. About the life she'd built that bore no resemblance to the one she'd. Because I might die, he said bluntly. The surgery has risks. And I realized that if I died tomorrow, the last memory you'd have of me would be that trial, those charges, that man who hurt you. I wanted you to see that I've changed. That prison has taught me. Stop, Chioma interrupted. I didn't come here for a redemption story. I came here to tell you something, and I need you to actually hear it. He fell silent, waiting. I forgive you, she said simply. Not because you've changed, not because you're sick, not because you apologized. I forgive you because carrying anger toward you takes energy I'd rather spend elsewhere. I forgive you because my children deserve a mother who's not weighed down by bitterness. I forgive you because I choose to. Chitty's eyes filled with tears. Thank you. Thank you, Chioma. I'm not finished, she continued firmly. I forgive you, but that doesn't mean I want you in my life. It doesn't mean our children owe you a relationship. It doesn't erase what you did or excuse the consequences you're facing. Forgiveness doesn't mean reconciliation. It just means I'm letting go of the hold you have on my emotional well-being. I understand. Do you? Because I need you to know, I didn't come here to give you closure. I came here to demonstrate to myself that I can sit across from you and feel nothing but pity. You were my nightmare for years. Now you're just a man in prison, facing mortality, realizing too late that you destroyed the only things that mattered. She stood to leave, then paused. I hope your surgery goes well. Not for your sake, But because our children shouldn't have to process your death on top of everything else you've put them through. But whether you live or die, Chitty, my life goes on. I'm not defined by what you did to me anymore. I'm defined by what I built after I escaped you. Chinedu stood too. He looked at his father one last time. Goodbye, Papa. I hope you get better. But Mama's right, you're not part of our life anymore. You're just someone we used to know. As they walked out of the prison, Chinedu took his mother's hand. I don't feel scared anymore. Just sad. For him, I mean. He could have had us, had a real family, had something good. But he chose wrong, and now he has nothing. That's very wise, baby. Did you mean it? About forgiving him? I think so. Or I'm learning to mean it. Forgiveness is a process, not a moment. But yes, I think I do forgive him. Not for his benefit, for mine. Chitty survived the surgery. Chioma received updates through the prison system but didn't visit again. There was nothing more to say, nothing more to resolve. She'd closed that chapter definitively. 5 years after the confrontation in Mushin, the Okafor Foundation celebrated its anniversary with a gala event in Lagos. 5 years of helping over 300 women escape domestic violence. 5 years of providing legal aid, housing assistance, job training, counseling. 5 years of proving that survival was possible, that transformation was real, that women didn't have to accept abuse as inevitable. Chioma stood at the podium, looking out at a room full of donors, survivors, advocates, and allies. Her children sat at a table near the front, Adana home from law school, Ibuka publishing his first book, Chinedu thriving as a confident young teenager. Amara sat beside them, proud and powerful as ever. And in the back, almost invisible, sat Ngozi with 5-year-old Kalechi. She'd become one of the Foundation's most effective advocates, her story of being both perpetrator and victim resonating with complicated audiences. She'd completed her accounting degree and now worked as the Foundation's financial manager, determined to handle money ethically after her crimes. 5 years ago, Chioma began, I was a woman who thought she was nothing. My husband had convinced me I was worthless, that I was lucky anyone would stay with me, that I had no options and no future. He was wrong about all of it. She told the story they'd all heard before, but it never got old, the hidden meals, Amara's intervention, the recording, the trial, the conviction. But she also told the parts that came after, the parts that mattered more. Revenge isn't just about bringing down the people who hurt you, she said. It's about rising so far above them that they become irrelevant. It's about building something so meaningful that their opinion of you doesn't matter anymore. It's about transforming pain into purpose. She talked about the women they'd helped, the lives they'd changed, the cycles of abuse they'd broken. She talked about children growing up in safe homes, women discovering their worth, communities learning that you did the actual work, facing your abuser, fighting the case, building the foundation, healing yourself and your children. That was all you. They stood in comfortable silence, two women who'd turned betrayal into purpose, pain into power, survival into success. What happens now? Amara asked. You've accomplished everything you set out to do. Chitty is in prison. Your children are thriving. The foundation is successful. Your consulting business is profitable. You've literally built the empire we planned. So what's next? Chioma thought about that, about the life stretching ahead of her, full of possibility instead of limitation. I want to help more women build empires, she said finally. Not just escape abuse, but thrive after it. I want to create a business incubator for survivors, give them the tools and funding to become entrepreneurs. I want to prove that abuse survivors aren't just victims, we're warriors who've been through fire and emerged as steel. Then that's what we'll build next, Amara agreed. Together. As they returned to the gala, Chioma caught her reflection in the glass door, a woman in an elegant gown, confident and powerful, surrounded by people who respected her, admired her, learned from her. She barely recognized the terrified janitor who'd hidden to eat leftovers 5 years ago. But that woman was still part of her, the survival skills, the resilience, the determination that had carried her through the darkest times. She hadn't erased that woman. She'd honored her by becoming everything she'd been capable of all along. That night, back in her beautiful apartment in Ikoyi, purchased with her own money, filled with her own possessions, decorated to her own taste, Chioma sat down and wrote one final letter. Dear women hiding in closets, eating leftovers, believing the lies. I see you. I was you. I know the fear, the shame, the certainty that this is all you deserve, all you'll ever have. I'm writing to tell you that you're wrong. Not because you're stupid, you're not. But because the people abusing you have spent years convincing you of lies, and sometimes we believe lies when we hear them enough. You are not worthless. You are not trapped. You are not lucky they stay despite your inadequacy. You are surviving something that would break most people. That survival proves your strength, not your weakness. When you're ready, and only you can decide when that is, there are people who will help you. Organizations like ours, women who've walked this path, resources you don't know exist yet. The help is there. You just have to reach for it. And when you do escape, when you start rebuilding, remember this: the best revenge isn't destruction. It's construction. Build a life so beautiful, so meaningful, so full that your abuser becomes nothing more than a footnote in your origin story. Build yourself so high they can't reach you anymore. You are not defined by what was done to you. You are defined by what you do next. With solidarity and hope, Chioma Okafor, survivor, mother, businesswoman, foundation director, former janitor who ate leftovers, current woman building empires. She posted the letter on the foundation's website, on social media, wherever women might find it. Within hours, it had been shared thousands of times. Messages poured in from women across Africa and the diaspora, some asking for help, others sharing their own stories, many just saying, "I see you too." That night, Chioma slept peacefully in her comfortable bed, in her safe home, surrounded by proof of her transformation. No jumping at sounds. No flinching at shadows. No fear that tomorrow would bring more abuse. Just peace. Hard-earned, well-deserved peace. And in the morning, she'd wake up and continue building, not from anger or revenge or even justice anymore, but from joy. The joy of showing other women what was possible. The joy of living a life no one thought she deserved. The joy of being exactly who she was always meant to be. The billionaire had entered unannounced and seen a poor janitor hiding to eat leftovers. What she did made her see her own potential, made her fight back, made her transform pain into purpose, made her build an empire from ashes. But more importantly, what Chioma did made her into a survivor, a warrior, a mentor, a success story, proof that betrayal and abuse didn't have to be the end of the story. They could be the beginning of something better. And that was the best revenge of all. The end. Wow! What a journey! If this story touched your heart, hit that subscribe button and turn on all notifications because we have more incredible African stories coming your way. Did Chioma's transformation inspire you? Do you believe in forgiveness or holding grudges? Drop your thoughts in the comments below, we read every single one. Share this story with anyone who needs to hear that it's never too late to reclaim your power and build the life you deserve. And tell us, where are you watching from? We love our global community. Don't forget to like this video and check out our other stories of resilience, revenge, and redemption. See you in the next story.